Hey, this is AJ. Welcome back to the Handyman process. In today's video, we're going to be talking about different ways of accepting payments, primarily the electronic ways. Cash and check are pretty straightforward. But what are the other electronic ways of collecting money or collecting payments? What's available, what's out there, and then what do I do? So stay tuned. Okay. So in terms of collecting payment electronically, there's a lot of different ways, right? And there's some ways that people are using personally, and then ways that people are using from a business perspective. So if you're running a business, I recommend, first of all, that you stay in the business lane. So don't be using personal electronic means to collect payment unless you're reporting it over. And this goes back to the IRS doesn't like when you commingle your funds, when you have personal funds mixed in with business funds. So just to stay away from that, let's talk specifically to those funds that are just from the business side. So that being said, what's available, what's out there, or kind of what's common from a handyman perspective. So I'll talk about what I'm aware of, what I personally use, maybe as I started off, and then kind of what I've migrated to. So when people first start off, a lot of people will be drawn to Venmo, which if you have a Venmo account, you can have a business account and a personal account. I have both. And I actually started using Venmo initially when I first started off, right? Just simple and convenient for people. And I did it on the personal side, right? Because I didn't know any better. And if you're out there and you're starting this off, if you make a few mistakes here and there, it's not a big deal. But if you repeatedly do it, it's kind of an issue. So Venmo is one of them. Zelle is another example. I hardly ever use Venmo or Zelle these days, but actually I just used it yesterday. I have one client who prefers to pay with check. I have a few clients actually that prefer to pay with check. But in this particular case, she was out of town. She had an issue. I went over there, took care of it, and then she just Zelled me over the money. So that's another way of doing it. And then you have PayPal. Some people use PayPal. I tried that initially. It was clunky. I didn't like it, so I ended up turning it off. So I don't use PayPal anymore, but it is an option if you're trying to collect payments. And then I have a few clients that try to pay in Apple Cash. And I haven't cracked a nut on that. I use Apple Cash. It's actually how I pay my son when he works for me. He's like, "Dad, just give me Apple Cash," right? So I just transfer money over to him via Apple Cash. I haven't done that on the business side yet. And I don't even know. If you know, drop a comment down below how to set up a business account for that. I do know how to do personally, from a personal account. Now that I think about it, when I send Apple Cash, it says, "Hey, do you want to take it from this bank account?" I guess all I'd have to do is change my bank account, and then I can send and receive money. But I don't do Apple Cash very often. So what do? I would say probably 90 to 95% of my payments come in via credit cards. And how do I do that? And what are some of the options? So let's talk about payment processing companies to begin with, and then I'll tell you how I kind of tie it all together. So there's a few primary players out there when it comes to payment processing. The most common and the one that I use is called Square. So if you just go to search square.com, and as I'm going through this, I'm going to try to put some pictures up here as I usually do. But if you go to square.com, Square is a payment processor. They take 2.9% of whatever payments you get, plus I think like 30 cents on every transaction that kind of goes through. So you have to factor that into your business. A typical follow-on question will be, well, do you charge the customer for that? And the answer is yes. Do I do it explicitly? No, which means I don't say, hey, it's an additional 3% if you're going to pay by card. I just roll it into my pricing, right? Just like most restaurants, if you go to most restaurants, they don't say, oh, if you're paying with cash or credit card, the prices are different. That's changing a little bit these days, but most of the time people aren't charging you that extra fee. They're just factoring into the price. So I do that as well. I factor it into the price so that I just consider it part of doing business. So Square is really simple, straightforward. You can do a couple things with Square. You can have a reader on your phone. You can plug something in. You could do like a tap to pay. Or what I prefer to do is I just have a link to my CRM system, Markate. So I have an integration with Markate, so that when I send an invoice out, a little button pops up and says, you want to pay online. They hit the button, they enter their credit card details. And when they enter their credit card details, and I'll give some examples in here. Basically, it's going into Square's system. And then once it's in Square's system, Square takes the payment from my customer. They put it into the Square account and then they hold it. Sometimes they'll hold it for a few days. This can also be an issue for some people that have cash flow problems. Like, I can't wait 2 days. Like, if you can't wait 2 days for payment to clear, like, you have other business issues you need to worry about. Again, this is part of doing business, is you have accounts receivable, accounts payable, and there's always a little bit of lag and a flow to it, right? So you got to have some working capital or some working money set aside to kind of deal with those gaps and that lag in the money flow. So okay, to go back to the example, a customer pays me, it goes into Square, Square holds it, takes their 2.9% cut plus the 30 cents. Then what happens, right? What happens to that money? Well, in Square, you can have multiple integrations. So I talked about one integration where I have Square connected to my CRM Markate, so that when the invoice goes out, that little pay link is there. Then it goes into Square, and then from Square, I have it connected to my bank account, which is Novo. So Square essentially asks, hey, where do you want this money deposited? So I just give them my bank account information, and then it automatically goes over there. I'm not going to go into detail on how to set all the Square stuff up. You can go online. There's plenty of other videos on how to do that. But I want to just make it easy for you to understand that that's probably the easiest way of doing it. There's also an integration, another popular one called Stripe. I'm not familiar with Stripe. I think I had it turned on for a little while and I just turned it off because Square does everything I need to do. I'm not affiliated with Square at all. It's just who I've been using for both my Handyman business, and I've had other businesses in the past where I've used it for payment processing, and I've been pretty happy with it. So that's my end-to-end, right? It's Markate. So if I go back to the middle, right? I have Square connected to Markate, connected to Novo, and then the money just flows that way. So real simple, real straightforward. I've only ever had one refund. I had a customer that insisted on paying me before I did the work, which was just bizarre. I tried to talk him out of it. They're like, no, I insist. So I'm like, okay. So I charged them for work that I didn't do. And then like a month or two went by and I couldn't get them on my schedule. I'm like, listen, I can't have this on my books. So I went back in, and within Square, you could do a refund. And that's what I did, and ended up paying them back. So I don't have a lot of experience with that. If you find yourself in that kind of situation, again, dive in. There's probably some other YouTube videos out there to talk about that. Now, let's talk about if you're not doing that, right? If you're not using a CRM yet, but you still want to take credit card payments, what do you do? Well, in this particular case, let's go back to two integrations that I talked about. You still need to have Square set up. So you can do everything actually straight through Square. You can send an invoice through Square and have it connected to your bank account, or however you want to do it. Or the other thing is, if you use Novo, the banking app that I use and I recommend, there's an invoice feature within Novo that you can send an invoice out. And if you have it integrated with Square, you can just send that invoice out and then the money flows straight over there. So those are simple ways of doing it. If you're starting off and you're like, I don't want to have all this stuff set up, let me fast forward, right? Let's say you're in business for a few years. You're going to kick yourself for not having done all this stuff ahead of time. So my recommendation would be go ahead and bite the bullet, right? Pay the $39 a month for Markate. Link will be down below if you want to use my referral link. Go ahead and set up Square. Square is free to set up. Go ahead and set up Novo. Novo is free to set up. Again, if you use the link down below, I think right now they got a promotion. If you use the link that I have down below, you'll get $100 in your account. I'll get $100 in my account. So it's kind of a win-win. But even if you don't want to use any of that stuff, it doesn't really matter to me what you use. What matters is when you open up the option for customers to pay you with a credit card, you're going to make a lot more money, right? And you're going to impress the customers that you are working for. Like, oh, wow, you accept credit cards? That's great, right? Because a lot of people, they just pay on credit cards, right? That's just the way we live these days. So if you're trying to set that stuff up, go ahead and follow kind of the recommendations I'm giving. If you have any questions on, if you're getting stuck in different areas, go ahead and drop a comment down below. Let me know. If you want me to dive deeper or further into something, again, drop a comment down below. Let me know. And that's all I got for today's video. If you have any ideas or anything else for future videos, again, drop it down below. Let me know. If you're getting value out of this content, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and stay tuned for the next one.